famed author Clive Cussler.
The hero, Dirk Pitt.
Some black terrorist bunch hired him to refit the ship. Came through about 7 o'clock this evening, carrying a load of about 70 black guys. He shrugged listlessly, as though he no longer gave a damn.
Vixen-03. Episode 7. Cesspool on the Potomac.
Apparently had COVID for a month.
Oh.
It lingered.
Over here we're having a breakout of COVID and type A flu.
Ugh.
So we're just churning through teachers.
I know type A personality is unbearable, so a type A flu must be even worse.
I don't know if there's a correlation, but I'll go with it. Sure.
A friend of mine down south had COVID like back in September. And he says he just felt like really sniffly and occasionally had a cough. And the doctor was just like, oh, it's just a post-viral thing. It's okay. It'll go away on its own. And last week, he was finally diagnosed with pneumonia.
Oh, my God. He's been walking around with pneumonia? I
think he just got pneumonia now because he said it got a lot worse all of a sudden over Christmas. Like he had a post-viral thing that wouldn't go away. And then it ramped up and he's like back at the doctor going, okay, it's suddenly gotten worse. And they do some tests and they're like, oh, shit, we have to put you on like this super harsh drugs now.
Well, it makes sense because you're so open to infection after a virus. It just, all your defenses are down, especially after 40.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's my age, so.
Would you get anything? How was your Christmas and your holidays?
Good. I mostly got books and gift cards for books and fancy soaps from Dr. Squatch.
Oh,
and nice. I'm going to see if this works. It occurred to me I might have to like zoom way out for this, but my youngest kid made me the sword from Berserk.
It's dangerous. Look at that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's 6 feet tall and really hard to move around. So I have some fitness goals for the coming year.
It's like a claymore.
If a claymore was 10 times wider, yeah.
I got the sweater, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's green.
What not a real green dress, that's cruel.
It's a sweater for a lady, but it has buttons. So a lot of the women's clothing doesn't have buttons on sweaters. Like you'd never have to fasten it. And it goes all the way down. It's not like a half sweater. And it's got pockets. I'm deeply happy.
That's half the reason my wife knits so much is so that she can have clothes with buttons and that go all the way down and have pockets.
I've heard this rant before. I'm mystified by sweaters with buttons.
My daughter is excited because she has a couple of skirts which have pockets, and they're big enough pockets to put like entire books in. She's like,
yeah, pockets.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It seems like such a small thing. I have put on my husband's jeans because we're basically twins, and he has such bigger pockets. We're essentially the same size human being.
It doesn't take that much more fabric to make the pocket go more than an inch deep. I don't understand that. I guess it's because you have purses and fanny packs and things.
We went to the American Museum of Natural History, a dinosaur museum. Yes. I don't know why we do this as parents. It's just torture. All I saw was to see people with toddlers. Why take a toddler out of the house? They don't care. Humans do everything wrong, and taking your toddlers anywhere, they're not going to be grateful. They won't remember the dinosaurs. You will only remember being stressed out with a tired, hungry toddler.
Depends on the age, because I know my kids, when they were small, they loved the aquarium, they loved Science World, they loved dinosaur exhibits, but that's like after they're 4. Before they're 4, their attention span is about, they have fun for 5 minutes and then they hit a wall and take everyone with them.
Yes, they do. They're tyrants. But my kids are 8 and 15 and 3/4, and we were just wishing all the little ones would leave. We're like, This place needs an age minimum. 8 and up would be awesome. And this takes the pressure off the parents of young kids. They don't have to do these things. You don't need the Instagram photo of your kid next to this T-Rex. He or she won't remember.
Oh, God, I wonder what the Facebook photo requirements are for things like that. Like, you have to be seen being out with your kids doing cool, amazing stuff.
Yes. Otherwise, you're not a good parent if you're not performatively a good parent.
Fortunately, my kids are old enough now that we don't go anywhere. We don't do anything.
We take them roller skating like Mormons.
I mean, actually, one of them's going skating in about an hour. So there's that. And my middleest, they're going to London for their high school trip. And she is looking forward to the London Museum of Natural History and the dinosaurs there more than anything else.
Oh, excellent. I'm telling you, there needs to be an age minimum so the people that truly enjoy dinosaurs. I want to look at the dinosaur bones. Your
Yes.
daughter wants to look at the dinosaur bones, but she doesn't want a screaming baby anywhere near her.
No.
Let the grown-ups enjoy the museums peacefully. Keep the toddlers at home.
Yeah. Have it like movie theaters where you have screaming child days.
Yes. That's brilliant. You could complain about appliances all day.
Oh, God, yeah. We are at that age where we could make an entire podcast complaining about appliances.
Oh my God. There's so many Clive Cussler books. We'll go from complaining about appliances to retirement savings to surgical procedures.
Sweet.
Oh, my cataracts. God damn.
This podcast will just be a chronicle of our downfall.
Well, that's how time works. So
Good point. I guess we should start.
I guess we only have a little bit of the book to go through.
I think this recording is going to be either one mega episode or I'll chop it up and make 2 episodes. But we only have to go from chapter 46 to chapter 68. Because I got to say, once the action starts and once he's just writing action, there's actually a lot less for us to talk about.
Yeah, it just rolls into... How many shoulder rolls can we describe?
Yeah. And I think I'm doing the intro this time. Only one really appropriate intro, and that is Welcome to Cussler Hustlers, the only Clive Cussler podcast in 2024. I'm your co-host Topper. Over there is my co-host Nancy.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year.
Woo!
Will this horrible year never end?
It's not happy. It's cold. It's January.
And I guess some on-topic banter I can share about is we had a whole issue with our podcast was no longer listed on Apple or Google, and I'm not entirely sure why, but we were back in the drafts for Apple and Google. But I got all that sorted out. We are back. We are listed on Apple. We're on Google. We are on Podcast FM, and as of this morning, we're on iHeartRadio as well.
Oh, wow. iHeartRadio.
And they're the ones that have all the podcast awards. I mean, I don't think we're going to win any of those, but it's still neat that we're now on a lot more platforms than we were just like a week ago. So now is the time to start advertising because we're finally everywhere.
And I wanted to check the Instagram because there's one person that keeps interacting, and we should say hi.
Yeah, I think that's Veto Bruce.
Vito Bruce. Hi, Vito Bruce.
And I don't know if he's a bot or not because he likes every post and does the clap emojis, and that's it.
If you're a bot, we like you anyway. Your ones and zeros are gorgeous.
If you're a bot, we love you. Thank you very much. Our podcast is #1 with bots.
Can't prove it otherwise. We can print the facts however we want them.
He's got more followers than I ever had. Here's hoping he's real.
Yes, I hope he is. Or maybe he's listening right now. This has got to be eerie if he's driving with his... Maybe he listens in secret with his family, unaware, and we're just totally outing him.
And the other account, I guess I have to say thank you to. Oh yeah, Shipwreck Hunter in Training was the one who pointed out that we weren't on Apple or Amazon. Thanks to him, we're everywhere again.
Thank you, Shipwreck Hunter in Training. That is a very cool name.
And very appropriate for this podcast.
It really is. It's on the nose. That person sounds like they have their life together. Everything's on theme. Their decorations go up on the first day, come down on the last day. No delays. We're doing Vixen-03, and we're up to chapter 46. Hi, everybody.
And we are in Oklahoma.
Yes. Steiger is flying his F-140 jet, and he goes to look for a man called Lovell at a, what are they called?
VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars.
Yes, a VFW hall, which is, usually they have a nice wooden bar in there, and otherwise it's just a big empty hall.
Yep. Up here in Canada, we have the Legion.
Was down, drinking at the Legion.
Which is basically the same thing, and they have meat draws and bingo, and they get lots of good live music.
It's where old men go to congregate.
Yep.
I'm not allowed in. I can only assume they're doing fantastic things in there.
There's shuffleboard.
I think the VFW closest to me is still populated by people who were in WW2. It's really the Walker set.
I'll say it.
The current wars aren't going to VFWs. Like the cool veterans, the ones that are from the newest wars, I don't think they hang out at the VFWs. I think they go to regular bars. It's just the geriatrics that hang out at the VFWs.
But the beer is so cheap.
The last guy who was the founding member of the SAS died last week. He was 103.
Oh, hooray! Steiger is in Oklahoma. I do like the line that he stops on the side of the road to water the plants and ponders killing himself because Oklahoma is just that boring.
That tracks.
That came out of nowhere. Chapter 46 is a comedy chapter. This is a wacky... There should be a laugh track happening in this chapter.
Well, it's either wacky or very uncomfortable, because the next part, well, Lovell, he finds Lovell, the guy who bought the missile heads from the Merchant of Death, and they don't know what they have, and Steiger's, his legs are weak. He's panicked by how these guys have been maintaining these ordinances. So he's like, you've been shooting at them?
They set them up on a tractor for the 4th of July and spent all day shooting at them, but the dang things wouldn't explode. So they were turned into the posts lining the gate on the way in. So Steiger drove past them on the way into the VFW.
The VFW guys are very cooperative. They just want to secure live rounds. So Steiger's got to promise them, yes, I'll give you a dozen new live rounds for your next 4th of July, which sounds like a very responsible military decision. To give just some randos in Oklahoma part of an arsenal. Go for it.
It was the 70s. We weren't nearly as safety conscious as we are now.
No, their safety wasn't a thing.
They're veterans of foreign wars. Let them have a little fun.
I was listening to something. There were old pictures of people in New York putting their babies out onto fire escapes to give them air during consumption times. And it looks horrific. You're like, oh my God, that baby's going to fall off the fire escape. You see these strapped four-story high. And this was wildly popular from like the 20s right through the 50s. And you're like, oh, why did this stop? Child safety came into vogue. The first child safety seats, like the concept came about.
Mm-hmm.
Child safety.
I mean...
That's wild. Before you just give your kid a cigarette, good luck in the mines. You're 2 weeks old. Best of luck.
Based on all the history I've learned from Behind the Bastards and the Dollop and all that, child safety wasn't really an issue because you just had 10 kids and hoped that a few of them squeaked through to adulthood. There was that built-in sense of, you're not all gonna make it.
I could still get attached. I don't know. I only have two.
I got attached to the darn things, yeah, but I guess there was no market for child safety.
The children of the VFW will get the rounds. Sorry for that tangent. For the next holiday picnic. And then we go to chapter 47, where we see Dale Jarvis again. And we're reminded that Dale Jarvis is a fatty.
Yes, chapter 47 starts with him eating pie. But I just wanted to point out that there's a couple of chapters at the end of 46 where we go back to Pitt's point of view. And his secretary wakes him up because he's having a nap in his office.
Oh, what count is this?
I'm not sure I've been counting, but we get one this chapter and one next chapter. But we meet his secretary, Zeri Pachinski, who is never mentioned again, and she tells him that he has 2 phone calls, one from Lauren and one from Steiger, and he has a visitor who is Sam Jackson, the guy who took the photos.
He tells the secretary, yeah, I just found her dad's body, but I'm not going to talk to her right now. Tell her to call her back.
Yeah.
He's not that thorough. He just puts her off.
The other ones are important. I would like to point out that for all of the editing I've done in the last couple episodes, you called Lauren Dana a couple of times.
Sorry. I don't know any Laurens or Danas.
Well, Dana was from the Titanic, Dana Seagram. So you're getting your leading ladies mixed up, I think.
Oh my, that's unspeakable.
Titanic still lives in your head.
Are the women just interchangeable? That can't be.
In the 70s? Nah. Anyway, yes, chapter 47, Dale Jarvis eating pie.
I don't know why Clive always has to point out when somebody's a fatty. He's like, we get Jack Ravenfoot coming by. We don't know what's on his tray in the cafeteria. Is it all salads? Jack Ravenfoot is tall and handsome and makes me deeply uncomfortable.
So Clive introduces so many new characters at the end of his books. We get 2 new characters last chapter because we got Lovell and we got Zeri. This chapter we get Jack Ravenfoot, who's an all-muscle Cheyenne native, but he has a degree from Yale and he has the rank of Commodore, so he's not just an Indian, he's a smart one. And I feel like there was a lot of attention paid to he's not like the other Indians.
Yes, it's deeply he's only written here for
Native Americans.
To mix it up a bit?
Mix it up a bit, and they make some pale-face jokes.
Yes, that's it. That's a more dialed-in reason. Yes, he was there to make a pale-face joke.
They're good sports.
The only reason for his character to exist was that joke. And it wasn't a good joke. It
wasn't a good joke, and he's just there to sort through some of the plot. So he's there because he says his old buddy Sandecker asked him to track down some missing 16-inch shells because Numa wants to drop them on coral to do seismic testing, but the only ones that'll work are these Vietnam-era ones. Jarvis wants to talk to Sandecker, and Ravenswood recommends he talks to Pitt. And then Jarvis puts all this together and realizes this might have to deal with Operation Wild Rose.
Yeah.
And this is a great big long chapter, but it's only to put Jarvis on the trail of Wild Rose again.
He's like the guy in the basement with the red strings and the pictures looking for the serial killer. It's coming together. It's all coalescing. Jarvis figured out that this might have to do with Wild Rose.
Yeah, because a few chapters ago, he was trying to track down used battleships, and they were all accounted for. So this book put him on the trail of Operation Wild Rose, and then took him off the trail, and then put him back on the trail again, because I think Clive realized, oh shit, he has no reason to keep digging. I gotta fix that.
Wasn't he telling this friend that this was just a scenario written for giggles? Just an extraordinary scenario written as a theory just to respond to it in case of an emergency, not an actual scenario or a plan that was going to take place.
Yeah, we have all these wacky plans written down just in case.
He's very paternal towards Lucerna and kind of dismissive, being like, oh, you silly boy, you just paid a lot of money for these plans that are just nonsense.
Yep.
And now he's back and he's like, oh my god.
Maybe it is real. Everyone's looking for these battleship shells.
I was just talking to Kaiser Soze. Oh my god.
Yeah, basically.
I realized when we get to chapter 48 with Felicia and Daggett, Clive loves alliteration. He loves sneaky alliteration because it was Felicia and Fred meet Lauren in a limo. Oh, for you, Clive. Fun.
That is one thing I can confirm. When you are trying to hit your word limit and you're so close to the end, you start going a little loopy, and you got to do little fun things to keep it interesting for yourself.
Yes. It's like, oh, Felicia.
I'm going to sneak this past the editor.
Daggett brings up, since Lauren's in the limo, Senator Daggett brings up Lucerna's upbringing, and it's the stereotypical 1980s, nonsensical, every black person lives in a tenement with 9 brothers and sisters, and the dad has left. According to news, I remember Peter Jennings, and back when I was a kid, like, this was America. There was white America, and there's black America, and this was black America, and this was how it was portrayed only. Yeah,
it wasn't until, like, the last 5 or 10 years that I learned the history of the phrase, the breakdown of the family. And that was specifically about single parents raising black kids, and usually the dad had left the picture.
Yes, and
that was the only time it was used. It was not used in, like, white areas where maybe the same thing happened, or it wasn't being used in white areas now where we have the opioid crisis, which is fucking up families in, largely white red states.
The systematic racism is astounding. This is a snapshot of that time in that particular racism. We're doing archaeology of the weirdest sort here.
Mm-hmm. And with the weird redemption Lucerna gets way at the end, it kind of makes you think, because right now he's fighting for a homeland for the black race. Right now, like his words, not mine. He's fighting the American government to get money sent to Africa, and he's hoping that he can use all that power and influence to help black people over here. We'll get to his change of heart later. But he also talks about how, and once again, using quotes, our race needs a homeland. All the Jews looked with pride to Israel. We need something like that, which is also a great time for us to have that line right now.
Kind of like a Rhodesia.
Yeah, Rhodesia was important. White people needed a homeland to look to.
Yeah. This is a opposite day of that. It's all very like, oh God, why'd you put your book in your life? Why? Couldn't go anywhere else.
There's a lot of politics in this book. Anyway, yes, Felicia and Daggett and Lauren are in the limo because they need to once again nail down that they need Lauren's vote on the AAR funding the next day. But then the door opens.
Dirk jumps into the limo. He apparently saw Lauren pop into the limo, saw that she was in there with Daggett, and knew he had to talk to him. But this is the first time they meet. Daggett has no idea who Dirk is. And Dirk is like, what? I'm here to order pictures.
I did like that.
Very blithely.
Because he wants to order pictures because he was talking with his dad, Senator George Pitt, about these photos. And he said,
as you do.
When I told Dad, he asked for a copy of the photos. He's never seen his boy in action before.
I wrote that down too. Dirk's dad has never seen him in action? Weird. Is that something... Is there a meeting among men? Is there like a union meeting where you have to share tapes?
Once again, maybe in the 70s. Not where I'm sitting.
Your dad should never see... I don't even like that people use the word daddy in any sexual connotation. No.
Daddy, no!
Daddy, yes!
No. Keep dad out of sex. It was just a weird line. Dad wants pictures of you and Lauren? I don't know. What? I'm sure even fictionally, the character didn't believe that.
Yep.
Like, think you're Clive. You're writing this character, and he's like, oh yeah, he's just bullshitting these characters. But still, he's besmirching the honor of his fictional dad, he's making him out to be a slimeball.
Yeah, he basically dares Daggett to release the photos. And I love the line, Congress frowns on scum who pull gutter tactics to pass legislation.
No, they don't. That's the only way you think it's...
I wrote ha 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 after that. But then Daggett just gives up. He's like, okay, fine, you win. This is a weird chapter.
Just to remind everyone, we're recording January 7th. Yesterday was the
oh yeah
anniversary of Scumbags, or second anniversary of Scumbags insurging on the Capitol of the United States.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun having all the old tweets from that day popping up. Like somebody posted 4 or 5 tweets from Kevin Sorbo in a row talking about how everyone's going to the Capitol, everyone stay safe. These are all patriots. Don't be like Antifa. We respect cops. And then ending with, there were no conservatives there that day. It was Antifa trying to make us look bad.
Yes. Meanwhile, they were beating cops with flagpoles. It was so on the nose for the death of democracy. You're beating a cop with an American flag. There's nowhere to go. There's no more up. It's only down. The trajectory is down.
I remember that day because I was watching it in my cube at work, trying to find good live streams of it happening, and that's how I happened upon basically the only account on Twitch I follow, which is sort of a live Canadian news/comedy channel called The Surfs, and they had the best coverage of it, and I've been a follower of theirs ever since.
Oh, The Surfs, eh?
But yeah, that was just something like everybody in my office was watching different streams, and then they'd walk by and going, hey, are you seeing this shit that's happening in America? I'm like, yeah, I'm watching it right here. It's like, cool, I got a different channel. And we're all talking about it, and like, it was hilarious for us. a little worrying, but it was mostly hilarious for us up in Canada, just like holding our heads going, oh my God, they're doing this now.
In 10 years, it's you. 10 years.
No, year and a half ago, we had our trucker convoy where a whole bunch of truckers, not the employees, but the people who own the trucking companies, basically cosplaying as truckers, drove all their semi-trucks to Ottawa and blocked off the city limits and the downtown and just blasted their horns to protest vaccines.
We had that in DC too. It was like an infection. We caught it. We caught it on the Rainbow Bridge. We brought the trucker infection down.
Yours was after ours.
I don't want them, but we'll take them.
The trucker convoy. Anyway, this chapter ends with, like, I had to highlight a lot of lines from this chapter, but this chapter ends with Lauren leaning on Dirk and thanking him for saving her, and he says, there's times when even a feminist needs a chauvinist to lean on. Yes,
but to be fair, as the critical feminist here, I think he was saying that in jest. He was trying to make her feel better and get a smile out of her. And I thought that was sweet.
I appreciate that he went in there and basically kicked ass and saved both of their careers, but he was also risking her career because he was like, well, sure, if you release those photos, she'll be fine, but it'll make you look bad, Daggett, because you had to resort to these underhanded tactics. And like, Lauren's probably sitting there going, no, I still don't want you to release the photos.
In actuality, maybe Daggett would have some blowback, but in the 80s, they were like, how dare you, woman, for being naked at some point in your life? Her career would have been so buried.
Yep.
Pitt was writing checks not from his bank account here.
But they all cashed because he's the hero.
Oh, naturally.
Yeah.
And when he gets back to his car, he realizes that Jarvis left Dirk a note, and he's intrigued.
Oh, yeah.
Because remember, Pitt has not met Jarvis yet.
Yeah, but that'll be fun in a couple chapters. But first we get chapter 49, which is a short one, and it's Lusana, post-kidnapping, bouncing in a cold truck, and being driven to Fox's fake battleship.
Yes, he remembers as he goes in and out of hazy consciousness, he was talking to a man he thought was a pilot. A man offers him a drink.
Oh, yeah.
He downs the drink too late. He's like, oh, pilots don't drink.
That's right. Flight Captain Mutafo. I skipped over that. Yeah, he was like...
But we can't blame Lusana because that rule probably just passed.
Right.
Up until then, it was marking on in the cockpit.
He was flying back to Africa and he got drugged in the airport and ended up on the battleship. That's right.
As he comes out of his stupor, Fox meets him. Fox, the man who believes Lusana is responsible for cutting down his family and burning down his house. This would be a tense meeting.
Mm-hmm.
More tension on Lusana's side. I feel like Fox has everything buttoned up. He's probably chill. He's a man who's accepted his fate.
The audiobook wasn't quite as tense because I'm not sure that the guy who reads the audiobook can do the Scottish accent without sounding boisterous. Like, I'm sure he probably should have tried for like low and threatening, but it was like, we're going to take a little trip, you and I. A trip with no return ticket. No, that's not. My accent was way off there, but.
Oh, you had it. You went into Caribbean a little bit. There is like a wavy line between like Scotch, Irish, Caribbean.
But he always makes Fox sound like happy. And I think that's the only way he can do the Scottish accent.
People have only ever heard a Scottish accent through the cinema of Shrek.
Oh, God.
Well, I have to save my ass.
Oh, I remember my grandpa. I never understood a word he said, but he was Scotch. He was a lovely man. He smoked a pipe.
My grandpa was Swedish, and he had no accent, except when he wanted to put one on just to mess with us, and he would slip into, like, the thickest Swedish accent he ever heard. And it's just, it's all vowels, and nobody has any idea what he's talking about, just to mess with us.
I had a friend whose grandfather was Swedish, and she had, like, 1 million brothers and sisters, and all of them were J names. It was a Jesus thing. But it's hilarious to be like Jennifer, Josephine, Joseph, when Grandpa can't say a J. So Josephine.
Jennifer, Josephine.
And they were all J names. It just, is it a joke?
Jessica, Jeffrey.
So we roll into, after the scary stuff of the Fox-Lusana meeting, we roll into chapter 50 and Jarvis and Pitt finally meet. Jarvis, as per his note, left Pitt instructions on how to contact him. And Pitt just invites him over to his house, which is like this super cool man museum.
Yes. This is the Pitt airplane hangar that will appear in every single book from now on. I guess this is the first appearance of it.
And I am realizing, because I had a boss that lived off of JFK.
Neat.
This was 20 years ago. And he had a car, like, in his house. And he was a single guy in his 60s. Real lucky with the ladies, so never settled down. And he had this kind of... He built this kind of facade of a lifestyle of, yes, all the fancy cars and having a car in the house. It's really neat.
Cool. Like in the house, like not just in the garage, but in the parts that he walks around in?
He had like an airplane hangar door in the front.
Nice.
Because he bought land in the 60s, off of JFK Airport. So probably not legal. And I guaranteed he's not alive anymore. I don't know what would happen to this land. But he did have a rolling fence of a door. I don't know how he heated the place. He must have frozen to death. But he had a indoor-outdoor front room, and then stairs into basically an apartment up above it.
Neat.
It was really neat. It made me think being a single guy sounds and looks really cool.
Yeah, I think when you're a kid, there's the part of your brain that is always working on building the biggest and best treehouse. And as you grow up, that branches off into building the biggest and best underground bunker or airplane hangar or just wacky bachelor house.
Yeah, and if you don't ever have kids, which I'm thinking is really bad for productivity. Nobody should have kids. If you have kids, you have to be practical and you have to get the safe things. No kids, you get to have fun. No banisters. Put that car, leave the keys in the ignition for your car in the living room.
I had a roommate years ago who was a single guy in his late 40s, and he had like a good job. He owned his own house, but he didn't like go on vacations. He had like a shitty old car. All he spent his money on was stereo equipment and really good whiskey and scotch. So he had like a $15,000 stereo. He had a huge vinyl collection, and he would go to work. Then he would come home and he would drink and listen to music for like 8 hours and then go to bed and do it again. And that was his life. Unbelievable stereo setup and $200 a bottle whiskey.
That is a fine life, and he's hurting no one.
No, exactly. I was like, wow, he knew exactly what he wanted and he went for it.
Yeah, that's great. And if he's happy, that's a simplicity that I wish we could all achieve.
Mm-hmm.
I once heard a story of two gay guys going on a meeting at work. So they just they're like, oh, you're gay, I'm gay. Let's have some sex and have Taco Bell and watch The Simpsons.
Nice.
And this was the guy retelling his story on a podcast. And so it was his story. It wasn't like, oh, I heard it from another. No, this was the gay man telling his story about how easy it is and how the streets are all messed up because we make everything so complicated.
Yeah, kind of.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds really straightforward. And maybe the single guys do have it right. Just lay it all on the table, have your whiskey, have your guns, have your cars in your living room. You'll be happier. So Jarvis is at Pitt's house, and he's trying to shake Pitt's story about the seismic research. It takes Pitt like a nanosecond to determine This guy's got the beat on me. This story is not going to work. And he puts up no resistance. He collapses completely and tells Jarvis everything.
They do something that you never do in these stories, which is tell the truth to the other person who knows something different.
We know. It's a collaboration.
Between the two of them, they put together the plot for the rest of the book. Yay!
And then Jarvis is like, oh, I'm so efficient. How did I put this together? I'm so efficient. After Pitt lays it all out systematically.
Yeah, because Pitt knew all about the plague, but didn't know about Wild Rose. And Jarvis knew all about Wild Rose and hadn't heard of the plague. And now they both leave terrified.
Yes. It's the worst combination of peanut butter and chocolate.
And for no apparent reason, in the middle of this chapter, we get a date with Lauren and Phil.
Yes. Lauren gets engaged. Mazel tov.
She gets engaged.
Lauren gets engaged to... Her date shows up. It's Phil Sawyer. He's tall and handsome, but he's Sawyer the Snorer. Total bore. But Lauren has a nice evening with him. They go to my favorite place, Pound Town. Then Lauren curses gods, the sky, the lawn. She's like, why can't Phil be Dirk?
Yeah.
But too late. She's engaged. She said yes.
He proposes. She says yes. And then she ends the chapter crying into a pillow.
Yes, after a violent, noisy session in the bedroom. Clive writes sex scenes like a virgin.
Yeah, kind of.
They had loud animals. Really? She's 33 years old. Can she handle that without a hip break?
He writes sex scenes, I think, the way that he was raised to think they're supposed to go in real life, and when they don't, this is his outlet.
Oh, so this is the twin beds being smushed together. It's one giant. He knows.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not two separate twin beds.
This is him going, I was promised tiger sex, damn it.
Tigers. Yes, and the tiger sex made her cry.
Yes, because it wasn't Pitt.
And then we go back to Jarvis and Pitt, and they are talking, they're collaborating. Pitt is so pretentious. He's like, I'm right, and I'll bet you a fancy bottle of wine, vintage wine, that I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to bring vintage wine into this. Yes, we already know you're cool. Your house is this tiny mansion with a car that spins on the floor. My mom had a boss who had a driveway where you pulled into the garage, and the platform underneath the car spun around, so you never backed out.
Neat.
And I imagine that device in Pitt's living room, just like this large circular lazy Susan in the floor, so you never have to back the car out.
Pitt and Jarvis are talking about how Operation Wild Rose all hinges on having a battleship staffed by a crew of blacks disguised as terrorists. And Dirk's like, I bet you I know exactly which battleship it is.
Yes.
He pulls out a history textbook and points out that the state flower of Iowa is the wild rose.
I listened to this chapter on audiobook.
This is a stretch.
The state flower, which never changes, and everyone knows everyone's state flower. It's like you learn it right after the capitals, I guess. Mount Polaire. There's no reason to know the state flower. And the guy who says Iowa in the audiobook says it like it's not an Earth word. He's like, Iowa.
If we're listening to the same audiobook, he also can't pronounce the word dower. He calls it door 3 times.
I must have missed that.
Fox looked on with a door expression. I'm like, it's dower. It rhymes with sour. It's spelled the same. Anyway.
And Jarvis, in the middle of, before they get to the battleship, Jarvis brings up this quaint scenario of, maybe there'll be a skyjacking, and I thought that was adorable.
That's much easier terrorism.
So Pitt and Jarvis makes a phone call. He determines, oh my God, Pitt's right. Not only is he right, he's completely right. It is the Iowa. So they get into Pitt's car and they head to the shipyard.
And chapter 51 is one of those chapters that's a really long chapter, but we can probably sum it up in a couple of sentences.
Well, let me try.
Okay.
They determine Lusana's being framed. The superintendent of the shipyard shows up. His name is Lou Metz. It's his anniversary. He's wearing a suit. It's raining. He gets soaking wet. And the Iowa's gone. It's also Pearl Harbor Day.
Yep. December 7th. I also did like the line that complains about Fox, like, oh, what's that crazy Scotsman doing now? And the guard tells him, well, he rolled through here with a bus full of about 70 black guys, and now the Iowa's gone. And the guard's just like, I thought that was normal.
Meanwhile, he didn't let Pitt and Jarvis in because they didn't have their passes.
Nope.
It was funny. But the other guys had passes, so naturally it's okay. That is...
Yep.
I feel like people have escape the country because of bureaucracy like that. That's it.
It's just all a matter of thinking, like, how much work am I making for myself? And he probably saw a bus full of people, and he was just like, I'm not dealing with this tonight. That's too many people. But these two, I can be a dick to these two.
Everything's an operation of scale. You have to know your powers and what you can apply when. So this security guard is very in tune. He's in touch with himself. We should be jealous.
Yeah.
And that brings us to part 5.
The Iowa.
Where the audiobook man says, the Iowa. But he says it in his weird way.
Part 5, The Iowa.
Yes. And we open on Peter Duvall and Ziegler. Ziegler's a little concerned because he thought that they gave Fox an exit strategy. And Duvall's like, he knew when he signed up. He's not living past today.
It was a one-way trip.
And then they sort of frame the prime minister by sending a telegram. It's not an email. I wanted to say email. It is not that.
Yeah, I summed that up in my notes as, the AAR is planning to launch an attack on your country. Our bad, sincerely, South Africa.
Yes, and a pistol about a missile.
That was one of my dad's favorite jokes. He would always make epistle jokes.
Oh,
I think that was one of his favorite words.
it's a great word. Your dad's right. Then we also learn that Emma is on board the Iowa.
Yes, and armed. Emma is everywhere you want to be.
And I like this chapter. Chapter 53, we cut to Carl Swedenborg. He sounds like a great guy. His kids are grown. His wife's passed away. He sounds like the human embodiment of Chowder. Just like down to earth, wholesome, just wonderful.
As a Swedish person, I have to, have feelings for anyone named Swedenborg.
Are they trying to conjure up the image of a Swedish person here? I don't...
Possibly.
Maybe stretch. The word buoy is used in this chapter so much it must set a literary record.
Channel boy.
Yeah, because Captain Swedenborg is taking his fishing trawler, the Molly Bender, down the river. They don't say what river it is yet. They hold off on what river it is for like 7 chapters.
Yes.
But he's taking his boat down the river, and then there's a big old boat coming up the river. And it's the Iowa, and it runs him over.
They get erased. Smithereens. And it's because the Iowa has to stay in the deepest part of the river, or else it'll get stranded.
Yeah, there was there's your problem just a couple of weeks ago about a bridge disaster where a boat bonked into a bridge, and it's a swinging bridge to allow boats to go by, but also trains to go by, and misaligned the bridge and caused one of the worst train accidents in American history. But they also talked a lot about how, because of that, boats have to go up on the right and boats have to go down on the right. You stay on your side. And if you don't, you have to have lights and signals to warn other people. But the Iowa has none of that shit. The Iowa just takes up the entire river and crushes everybody out of its way.
Like foil. Just this great guy goes from chowder to chum. And after they get annihilated, we cut to Pitt, and he drops Jarvis off at the White House. And he's like, really, Jarvis, if you get the poison gas, the quick death, destroy it. It can't fall into the hands of the army, even our army. And Jarvis is like, what? It's out of my hands if we get it. He's concerned about it, Jarvis is, but he's operating in a...
We'll do our best.
He's operating in a world where he's not the boss of the world.
What's he doing in charge of the CIA? If you're in charge of the CIA, I assume you have to think that you are, in fact, in charge of the world at all times.
Well, he still has to wake up the president, and I'm assuming the person in charge of the CIA feels like they outrank the president, but on paper, it goes the other direction.
Pitt drops off Jarvis, and then Pitt goes for coffee and makes a couple of mysterious phone calls.
Yes, he does. And then I don't have anything about the phone calls. I was just agreeing with you because I have no notes about that. I go right into 54.
Yeah, same here. Like, just says he makes 2 phone calls and then disappears.
Okay. Then we meet him at the hospital.
That's also something that Clive does a lot, is Dirk will just like walk off camera and do some stuff. And he doesn't always call it back properly, but I'm pretty sure the calls he was making was to Sandecker and Numa and arranging for his helicopter ride.
Oh.
But Dirk will always just walk off camera and make a phone call. So then in 10 chapters, when Deus Ex Machina happens, you're like, no, but he made the phone call. See, I set that up.
It's the slack. You're right. He's giving us the slack. You're absolutely right. It's chapter slack. He can write that into every chapter. If nothing happens again. If something does happen, you're like, oh, he made the phone call.
Thank goodness.
It's like a psychic hit. Clive learned cold reading, and he applied it literally.
Hey, if it works, it works.
He's at what point, because I hated Clive for this book. Titanic, I loved him. I was like, oh, this is a fun ride. It went on. Clive for this book, I'm like, this is a problem. When does this become a religion?
Which part of it?
The Cussler part. When does he? Which one of these books is going to start a Dianetics-like effect?
I don't know. I'm not sure when he starts becoming like a mega bestseller. I might have to look into the raw numbers of this. But at a certain point, I think he definitely falls into the trap of believing that he is like history's best action writer.
There's nothing to prove him wrong.
Based on book numbers, no.
He won.
I mean, he sold 300 million books. He is one of the top-selling authors of all time.
He was right.
It's entirely airport novels. For airport novels, these are definitely fairly dense and at least usually kind of interesting.
Oh, he beat Dan Brown out of the water every time. Those books are so terrible.
But I also think at a certain point, he's seeing how many named characters he can cram into this, because he keeps introducing characters for one chapter only, and we never hear from them ever again.
His outline chart must be madness.
Dozens and dozens.
But Pitt is in chapter 54 back at the hospital with Heidi Milligan.
Yes.
Who's the girlfriend of Admiral Bass?
Admiral Bass.
Pitt squeezes the very less details out of Bass's life, and he doesn't hit on Heidi. So some good, some bad.
Yeah. Squeezes out those details, but also squeezes out, with his dying last gasps, the exact technical details for how the quick death shells work. Every last hard number. These 16-inch guns go up, they're rifled for 7/8 of their lengths. Centripetal force activates the inner timer, the altimeter, and the release for the payload at 1,500 feet and at 1,000 feet detonation, and here's exactly how you open them up and disarm them.
Yes.
Thank God Bass had a really long death rattle in him for that.
Meanwhile, I go up 2 flights of steps. You can't talk to me for an hour. This guy's in 1,000 feet altimeter for device detonation.
Yeah, that's important. Keep that in mind, folks.
Never forget. Tattoos.
Heidi cries and begs for Pitt to stop interrogating him, but then she sees the compassion in his eyes, and she lets him keep going.
And kill her boyfriend.
Entirely what we know from people who look into Dirk Pitt's eyes is that they're just so full of compassion.
And hard cruelty and...
Cruelty! Cruelty is the word in every book. He has cruel eyes.
And chapter 55, Fox gets his boat stuck.
Yep.
Okay, ship.
Because all they did with ripping out all of the bulkheads and all the armor and everything they could was they raised the draft from 38 feet to 22 feet so it could go up the Potomac River. Then they hit a little sandbar at 21.5 feet.
Yes. And the Potomac is heading towards Washington. That's why Clive was keeping the river under wraps. The Iowa is going to do a terrorism on Washington, D.C.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, it is very dun, dun, dun.
And succeed, I should point out.
We cut to the president, who's in a room with a conference table. I'm glad he's got a conference table. Don't know why Clive pointed that out, but it was very long. It's very important, this table.
It's in a room with a conference table 300 feet below the White House. That part was kind of cool.
Yes.
They are in the nuclear shelter.
With a new character, we meet Admiral Kemper.
Was he in Titanic? Was he one of the guys...
Oh my God.
When they were doing all of their wheeling and dealing? I think Admiral Kemper was in Titanic. I think he's back.
I may have noted them because, one, the name. I was like, oh, this must have been written before Ed Kemper, because that name has fallen off. You don't really hear about Kempers unless it's the 6'9" serial killer.
Yes, I checked my doc. Admiral Kemper was in Titanic. Oh my God, they brought back a character.
And he's described as a man that could easily be mistaken for a department store worker.
Interesting description.
Which I think is code for kind of swishy.
Because I think in the last book he was described as just a huge, fat, boisterous, but
No, man.
Yeah.
It's either one or the other. It's either he's a mouse or a mountain.
Yeah, Admiral Joseph Kemper, Naval Chief of Staff, is a big, fat, powerful man with his shirt undone pretending to fish from the middle of the Titanic. I'm looking up my old notes. And in this one, he's just old. It's 1 year later.
Put a carnation in his pocket. Put him in Macy's if he's a floor walker.
It was a rough year for him.
To me, that just sounds delightful. Very nicely dressed. And then we cut to Fox, who crashes into a bridge. Nice to know everyone makes mistakes. And there's a guy, Howard McDonald, who's on top of the bridge that gets crashed into. And he's just another character standing there like Wile E. Coyote.
Yep.
He's getting mugged in a meadow. He's just driving. He's a milkman. He's driving his milk truck because it was the past and everyone had cute milk delivered to their doorstep artisanally. This guy's driving his truck, minding his own business, and he thinks a plane crashes on him. He can't make sense of the debris field. He gets out of his car, he looks down at the water, sees nothing, So he's truly a man mystified, with his truck totaled and no explanation for it.
Because it was the Iowa's gun control tower, which was made of plywood now. So all that's on the bridge is scrap plywood.
Why does Clive have to bring Howard McDonald into this? Now I'm worried about this guy's insurance.
I think later on, when things are happening to Washington, it would have been fun to bring him back. But we get like 8 new characters for that part.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So the ship goes on past the bridge like nothing happened. Pitt and Sandecker determine that the ship is in the Potomac and on its way to Washington. And Fox gets the Iowa ship, as much plywood as it is, the ship is stuck right next to Mount Vernon, which is where all the monuments are on the Potomac.
I don't know what the layout for Washington is, so...
I remember walking it from the Jefferson Memorial to the Lincoln Memorial to the Washington. It's like a triangle.
Alrighty.
So, yeah, Mount Vernon is Jefferson. And then if you walk to all 3, you've gone to 3 states in a few hundred feet. Because one's in Maryland, one's in D.C. proper, one's in Virginia.
Oh, okay. That kind of a thing.
It's all like, it's a state border thing, so it's really like this step I'm in Maryland, this step I'm in Virginia, that kind of thing. So it's fun to do. And the states over here, very small.
I was going to say, I don't have much opportunity to do that because out where I am, the provinces are larger than most European countries. I am a long drive away from the next thing I can do that to.
It is very much a difference between East Coast and West Coast.
Yep.
I remember meeting somebody from Nevada for the first time as a teenager, and it floored me. I'm like, he had to take a plane to go to another part of Nevada.
So far away. What's it like being a foreigner?
Then you look at a map, and you're like, oh, all of the Northeast can fit in Nevada. And then we cut to 58. Jarvis and Kemper and the president are discussing Fox. The president's been briefed on him. He says, oh, the guy who picked Fox must have known his onions, but what's his motivation? And Jarvis is like, they killed his family. Duh. He's been wound up.
This is one of the mega chapters where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different points of view changes, and I have so many notes. I don't know why Clive does that. Like, we just had 5 short chapters in a row, and then this chapter goes on for forever.
And they discuss, deal with the problem. They come up with 3 things. Blast the Iowa with copperhead missiles. Send a team of Navy SEALs, or 3, a low-yield nuclear weapon.
Yep.
And right after that is said, Jarvis says, oh, radioactivity does nothing for the quick death organism. But still on the table, that nuke.
He only brings that up because the nuke would work because of the temperatures involved. But somebody says a neutron bomb would be less devastating, and Jarvis is like, oh no, we can't use a neutron bomb because that's just radiation. That won't do the job.
Oh, thank you for the clarification.
Were neutron bombs actually like a thing? Because I thought they were still fictional.
I think it's fictional. Googling. Bear with us, folks. Neutron bombs.
Apparently, according to Quora, they are real.
Oh, Quora. Quora said you could be 15 months pregnant.
According to this, neutron bombs are just bombs that are designed for high radiation release, not high temperature.
You're a man of science, and you went to Quora. That's...
I went to Google, and Google went to Quora. Google failed me.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, yeah, the nuke is the last-ditch attack. And I can't believe that the American military can't take down a battleship made out of plywood.
A match. Some gasoline.
To be fair, most of their military is in other countries.
Oh, ooh, sick burn. Yes, true.
Sorry. Please send all hate mail to Cussler Hustlers at Instagram.
Meanwhile, back on the Fox wooden vessel, he unknowingly has the quick death missiles.
Is it?
But he doesn't know it, because it's unknowingly. And one of his underlings comes up, concerned, and he has to explain to the underling, through lies, no, we're doing live fire exercises. The government gave us permission to use this area, with the monuments. They proved that for live fire exercise.
We're in the Aberdeen Proving Grounds. That's what we were going to see. No, we're going to do target practice, but we're stuck. We'll float her off at high tide. And the guy's like, oh, this all makes sense. And goes back downstairs. And
It's just to make you feel bad for the greenhorn that's being sent back downstairs because he's described as very young. And Fox is getting cold feet now because he's like, oh, that guy is so nice and dutiful, like a Eagle Scout.
Like one of my kids.
He's a good boy, and he's going to die. But then he forgets about that and radios his spotter. This man goes through emotions like Kleenex. and
he does spot a helicopter approaching, but he sees that it's Numa, and he's like, nothing suspicious there, and then just goes back to whatever he's doing.
Oh, I forgot about this part. And then he talks to, on land is a spotter, so he can dial in his attack more efficiently. And the spotter has this accent like,
Oh yeah, like Alabama.
yeah,
Hey man, this gonna be a great.
like, did he just see airplane?
It's gonna be a great day for bombing the Capitol. I tell you what.
Yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and you're coming in clear as Christmas, and then he was fun. And Fox yells at him about economy of speech, and that gets him nowhere. So it's just a little tussle with him and the spotter. And then Pitt has an adventure. He's strapped to like a bungee cord.
Yep.
And out the helicopter like an amusement park ride. But he does it very gallantly. He tells Steiger, no, you can do this. Only you can fly the helicopter. Tells Sandecker, make sure there's scrambled eggs for breakfast. And then he drops out of scene.
First, he takes the radio tower because he's hanging so low. He hits the radio tower on the boat that Lieutenant Fergus and the SEAL team are using to sneak up on the Iowa. And then he slams into the Iowa and releases the rope. And Steiger's like, I think he just died. And then Steiger flies away.
And no trauma for Steiger whatsoever. I could imagine if you have like a little meat human dangling at the end of a cord, it wouldn't take too much pressure to swing your massive helicopter with all the torque and energy and horsepower and just make pizza with that human dangling on the cord. Just very little effort. You have to be very precise.
Yeah, especially because I think they still think the boat's made out of steel.
Oh, yes. And Clive says it's like Pitt is on an amusement park ride, or it's better than any amusement park ride.
Yeah.
I think this is now an amusement. I think you can do this now, just like for $10. They dangle you from something. It's an upcharge, but it's available.
Zipline obstacle course. That's what you need.
Yes, they're not wholesome like your family. There's no roller rink in this area.
Aw.
But just men with emotional issues and lots of equipment. And that brings us to the end of chapter 58. Can we take a short break?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, I will hit stop record so I can download these and make sure these ones come through nicely.
This has been Cussler Hustlers. Your hosts have been Topper and Nancy. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Cussler Hustlers.